Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host, where today we are talking UFC 313, headlined by Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. And this Saturday, I have a 5% max bet play up for clients. I am a 78% winner over the last 12 months on our max bet plays. Love the spot we have right now. And right now I have 3 plays up for clients and probably going to have about 6 plays, probably the most plays I've released on one card for clients. I love this card from a betting perspective. Normally I'm around 4 plays or so because that's, we want to be very selective, but I love this card from a betting perspective. So if you want to become a client, link down in the description. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up, and let's dive into the main event of the evening between Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. Now, you've got the current champion, Pereira, minus 120. On the comeback here, you got Magomed minus 106. Now, the big question here, everybody wants to know, is Magomed Ankalaev going to take down Alex Pereira? That is the storyline here. That is why this line is where it is. It's the wrestling, the takedowns. Can that be there for Magomed? Now, yes, he's from Dagestan, but typically, Magomed's not a wrestler. Like, I hate to break it to you, but he's not a wrestler. And history and stats will also support that. Now, can he go for takedowns? Can he shoot for him? Could he get Pereira down? Sure, those things can happen. But historically, it's just not really been what Magomed has done. And, you look through it here, out of his 14 UFC fights, Magomed has only secured 10 takedowns. He's averaging less than 1 successful takedown per 15 minutes. That's not good, especially if you're talking about a guy who is going to look to wrestle and just completely out-wrestle an opponent. 31% takedown success rate, not that high overall. And even if you look at a smaller sample size, even more recent, over his last 5 fights, he's only secured 3 takedowns. And those 3 takedowns took place in 2 of those fights. The other 3 fights, he didn't even land a takedown. So again, it's not, I don't really dive into that narrative of he's just going to take Pereira down and that's it. And that's the path. That's it. Pereira can consistently is evolving, getting better with his takedown defense. Hasn't fully been tested, of course, but this is not a guy that is just like, people are kind of putting Magomed into this like Khabib type of situation. It's not that. And for me here in this spot, I do think this fight mostly plays out on the feet, mostly plays at range. And I think there are multiple advantages here for Pereira in the striking. And I think one of the biggest issues for Ankalaev is he's very low volume. The guy just doesn't really push a pace, doesn't really push out much volume at all. And that, I think, is going to be a first issue for him here, where Pereira normally is pretty active, normally does push out a good volume, will walk you down. And you've got Magomed, he averages 3.64 significant strikes landed per minute, while Pereira averages 5.45. Now, you do have the volume side going to Pereira, but also the power advantage is absolutely on the Pereira side. So he's going to push out that volume, he's going to land more shots, and he's going to have the more damaging shots with that power. And you look at it, Pereira, out of his 9 UFC fights, he has 7 knockouts. And since 2022, Ankalaev has 2 knockouts. It was against the glass chin of Johnny Walker and against the UFC analyst in Anthony Smith. So not the most, not the most impressive of guys that he is finishing. These guys normally do get finished, so it's not the most impressive. Plus, Pereira is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, and I think that's going to also play into this striking advantage that he's going to be having. So multiple ways there, but you also got to add in the leg kicks. And going back and rewatching tape for both these fighters, one of the big takeaways for on the Magomed side is the fact that his fight against Jan Blachowicz, and that was a fight where, one, it was maybe one of the more boring, worst vacant title fights in the history of the sport. But besides for that, Jan Blachowicz was absolutely chopping away at the legs of Ankalaev. He was finding a ton of success. He was wobbling Ankalaev. Ankalaev looked, confused. He was hurt from them. He couldn't check them. I just thought he was getting bad reads on them. And if he's landing at that high of a clip on Ankalaev, I do believe that with the dynamic of the power in Pereira's hands, mixing in with the really high level leg kicks that he just continues to fire with no tell, I think that says a lot of bad things, where if Ankalaev can't check those, he's in a big amount of trouble. And then you got to look at strength of schedule. And, out of the last 8 opponents for Pereira, 7 of them were past champions. So he is beating and knocking out some of the best fighters on the planet. While you look at Ankalaev, I mean, not the most impressive rise here. I mean, he beat, Thiago Santos, who's 1-7 in his professional career right now on that kind of run. I think he's retired at this point. Anthony Smith, who's on a 2-5 run in the UFC. Johnny Walker on a 3-4 run in the UFC. And then even Alexander Rakic, with the fight that got him into this fight, it was a 55-53 in significant strikes for Ankalaev in a 3-rounder, another boring type of fight there. And, Rakic is 2-4 out of his last 6. So I'm just not that impressed with Ankalaev. I think he is a decent striker. This path to victory of wrestling, I don't think is going to be there. I think the harder hitter, the more experienced, the higher level, all points to Alex Pereira here. So I'm taking the champ here. If you're giving me -120, I'm taking it. Give me the champ, Alex Pereira. Next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Armen Petrosyan, -155 against Bruno Ferreira. Now, you've got Armen here. He's a high-volume, kickboxer. And you've got Bruno, who is really going to be an explosive, power puncher. And, overall, you've got to give the technical striking to Petrosyan. I think he's going to be the cleaner striker, wants to work at range, can push out a good volume. And really most of it going to be kind of looking to, outpoint you. And he's not that dangerous. When you're talking about just a guy that's a finisher or has power, that's not really him. And now he's about to face a guy who has massive power overall. And this is really where I kind of look at this fight here. And, Petrosyan's a guy that, wants to work in space, wants to, pitter-patter shots, not going to scare anyone with his power. And he wants a clean range type of fight. That's not really what Ferreira likes to do. He's a barbarian. He is going to come forward. And I think that's where he's going to find success. He's going to move forward. He's going to throw big shots. He's going to look to, really crash the pocket, not give the distance and the space that Petrosyan really wants. And I think that's, again, where he's going to land the bigger shots and just move forward. And I'm also not too high on the durability of Petrosyan, too. I think he's hittable. I think that he doesn't take shots very well. And this is, Bruno has off the charts power. I think he touches him once. And I think Petrosyan is in a lot of trouble. Plus, you add in the wrestling dynamic here. Now, I think there is a path here for Bruno to wrestle. It's not that he has been a wrestler, but I do think that there is a path here. He's got one takedown, in his UFC, tenure so far. But, 4 out of the 5 fights, didn't even go, didn't get out of the first round. So he hasn't had to do that. But you look at Petrosyan, there is a clear vulnerability here for him in this spot. Out of his 7 UFC fights, he's been taken down 15 times. Guys that want to take him down have taken him down. And I think that Bruno has the physicality, has the strength to look to kind of bulldoze forward. He can either bulldoze forward, throw the big shots, but if he bulldozes forward and latches onto the body or looks for a takedown, I think those are the level-changing opportunities that Bruno can get. And lastly, I think why this line is a little bit wider, I think this should literally be -110 each way, or maybe even Bruno as a slight favor here. But I do think that reason why we're getting some plus money here on Bruno is the fact of his last fight, and he got his last fight against Abus Magomedov, where not the best showing from Bruno, but, Abus is a terrible matchup for Bruno. Abus has a 6-inch reach advantage, and he's got strong wrestling background. And there were spots where Bruno hurt him. The wrestling saved Abus in certain spots here. It's not going to be the case that if he hurts Petrosyan is a pure kickboxer. He's going to have to stand or he's going to have to shell up on the ground. I like Bruno here. Give me that plus money at +130 on Bruno Ferreira. Next one here we're going to talk about is going to be John Castaneda, -115 against Chris Gutierrez, -105. Now, both these fighters did have a change in opponent recently, and you had Castaneda, who was supposed to fight last week against Douglas Silva de Andrade. That fell off. And then you've got Chris Gutierrez, who was supposed to fight Gene Masimoto, actually for this weekend, and he ended up fighting Rob Font. We cashed on Rob Font there, some plus money. But now you've got a spot here where, you look at Gutierrez. And Gutierrez is a guy that does have some good striking. He can be rangy. But the problem for me here is he's very one-dimensional. I mean, just very one-dimensional. And he's pretty good at it, but his leg kicks, you know what I mean? He loves to chop away at them. He's going to spam them. He's going to throw a bunch of them in the first round and really just see if he can throw, some of these at 100% power or as hard as possible, I guess, or whatever it is, and really damage him, that's the game changer. If he could chop away and really hurt your leg within those first few minutes, that's going to slow your movement down, slow your power down, not allow takedowns. And there's a lot of things that go into that. And he sticks to that game plan. He's going to chop away your legs as much as he can. He's going to be elusive, want to work in space. And that's how he has found success. Now, Castaneda here can mix it up a lot better. And I think that's where he has the advantage in this spot here, where he's going to look to push forward. I think that he can smother the kicker here. He's going to push out that volume, keep Gutierrez on that back foot. And I think that's where he finds success, because Gutierrez, there's times where he is just very low volume, almost either looking for the, the best counter shot that he can get instead of just kind of keeping pace, keeping active, or even there's backs where, guys moving forward and he's just kind of chipping away and throwing one leg kick at a time with no combination, nothing behind it, just a naked kick and then, move around, another kick and then move around as the opponent is landing and really dictating the pace. So I do think that's going to help him, plus a 4-inch reach advantage. And I do like the way that Castaneda stance switches, disguises attacks very well. And I think there's going to be opportunity for him there. Now, one of the bigger red flags on the Gutierrez side is going to be his takedown defense. And there's no doubt it's not good. He absolutely can be taken down. He absolutely, once he's down, can be held down. I think his get up game is shit. I don't think it's good, at all. And I do think this is where you're going to find opportunity for Castaneda to, push forward, land some shots, but mix it in. He's was a Division II college wrestler. So he does have at least the wrestling background for that path to be there. So in this spot here, I do like John Castaneda here. I think that he can mix in some takedowns, he can pressure, he can out volume him and find the opportunity to get the job done. So I'm taking John Castaneda -115. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is going to be Myron Santos -330 against Francis Marshall +250. Now, both of these guys here, I actually got to say that they're both talented. These are young guys coming in, young prospects. You got, Santos 24, Marshall's 25. And, I think both these guys are going to have success, as they get, as they continue to, in the UFC, grow within the sport. I think these guys really have the raw skills to kind of keep moving forward within, the UFC. Now, I also do believe there's a little bit of recency bias here, because again, in UFC, it's really, what have you done for me lately? You could have knocked somebody out 2 fights ago, but if you kind of stumbled, all of a sudden you're like the worst fighter. So it's a lot of overreactions when you're talking about the MMA market. And, Santos is coming off a knockout victory over Con Offley, who I don't rate very high, but he ended up getting a knockout victory, and it was a clean knockout victory. Man, it was a nice knockout victory. But and you got Marshall, who recently had a scrappy, tough fight against Dennis Bazooka. Now, that fight there, there were spots where Marshall didn't look good. There were spots where, maybe he's going to lose the fight. He did show he's got a dog in him, and he was able to dig out and find the victory. But you also got to remember that, Marshall was coming in on short notice, up a weight class, and yet he still got the victory. And I think that says a lot. I think people kind of look down on that type of performance there, but I thought it was a great performance, especially not being 100% prepared. Now, Santos, I think, is getting overvalued against Con Offley because Santos has shown maybe vulnerabilities, defensive wrestling, that type of thing. Con Offley is a wrestler, but the issue there is that Con Offley didn't even shoot a takedown in the fight, which is just terrible strategy, or he couldn't get to it. Either way, I'm not as impressed with that overall victory. Now, you definitely have Santos, who's going to be the overall better striker. He's going to be good at range. He's going to have the faster hands. But again, the glaring hole in his game is going to be the takedown defense. And, you do have his only loss was against a wrestler outside the UFC, against Dan Argueta. Now, Dan Argueta took him down multiple times and absolutely mauled him on the ground, getting the second round TKO victory. And that's kind of how I see this fight going here. I kind of see that, this is kind of the way that he can dictate the pace a little bit. And that's what I think Marshall can do. Marshall is a pressure forward type of guy. He's going to be relentless. He's not going to give up. He's not going to just say, hey, I missed a couple takedowns. He is going to shoot and shoot and shoot. And what I do also like about him is not just the fact that he is a strong wrestler, but the fact that, he has the cardio to just keep fueling these types of takedowns. And I think that that's where, against Myron, who is more of a striker, is going to start to be smothered, going to start to struggle, going to get frustrated. And that's where Francis Marshall, who is going to have the physicality advantage, the strength advantage, I think is going to outmuscle him in tight. And I think that's where Myron's going to have a lot of issues in this fight here. So I think that he's going to find those successful takedowns. I think that they're going to be there for him. So also, lastly, I do like the fact that Marshall is now training at ATT, high-level gym overall. He's training day to day in a room with killers. I do think that he's going to find a lot of success there with a game plan and those types of things at 25 years old. I like the spot here. So I think this line is definitely wide. I think that Santos should be the favorite, but this line is way too wide, and you got to take Francis Marshall here, a little sprinkle at plus 250. So there you have it for my plays for UFC 313. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. Got plays up right now. Like I said, I have a 5% max play up, 78% winner over the last 12 months on those plays. And we're going to keep it going, locked in. We've got like 7 more events straight coming up, and then like 1 week off, and then like another like 6 events. So we're just rocking and rolling. Let's keep it going, and let's cash.